I'm so excited for the second one. And I guess like that's where I dive into like what's hopeful to still come. For me, like you gotta have the Super Bowl in there, like doing the Super Bowl halftime show, because that's even another like, especially it's probably a good angle from the estate side of that if they want to continue from a music perspective to dive into is obviously that was like Super Bowl 27 or 28 by that point, and sure like there have been like music there before, but the way we think about Super Bowl halftimes now, it wasn't like that until he completely took over. Like he made it a spectacle that has now made that honor to play the halftime show every year exactly that.
What songs did he play at the
So it was interesting. It was quick. So it was in the middle of the Bad tour because this was January of '93.
Okay.
This is where again, why I started the show. Why I started this show particularly is fun because I wanted to have sports, but also be able to cross over other stuff. Yeah. And the Super Bowl halftime show with Michael is a great chance to do that.
True.
Because, there's parts about the performance I love. There's parts that I'm like kind of like, and that's kind of, and that's the whole thing with Michael too. It's just like there's a lot of stuff I love, but it's like, man, like you get to a certain point, and like so many of the performances aren't live vocals anymore. It's just playback, and so that's frustrating. But everything else that went into this was cool. So it was kind of like a squishing his set list from the Dangerous tour into like 12 13 minutes, whatever halftime show is now. But it was and this is where I hope there's a standalone shot of this either from the tour or from the Super Bowl in the second movie, and I think it just encapsulates like the raw power that Michael has. And I know they kind of did it in the Bad performance, but just like the amount of people that just like he starts a song in concert and they just faint because they can't like take the pandemonium. I think there's no greater example than that. Then on this tour, his first song is Jam, which is off of the Dangerous album, and he comes on stage in like this like sparkle jacket. He enters the stage like on a toaster, so like obviously like pops up, lands on stage. He stands there like motionless for like 2 minutes, and people are just going like nuts.
Toaster.
So like basically like it's a stage, like it's like a rising piece of the stage that like shoots you up, so you start under.
Yeah, I know what you're talking. I didn't realize they called that a toaster. That's a pretty funny name.
I didn't know that until I watched like the concert movie and for like what This Is It was going to be.
I've seen Billie Eilish has done that before.
Yeah,
she pops up.
So he that was his entrance for the Dangerous tour, and it was again like that video even before the movie had gone around. Just like if anybody ever asked you like how famous is Michael Jackson, just show them this of like people fainting by him just standing there, like he wasn't even performing yet. So
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say that, like, another thing is, like, people say, like, there'll never be another Michael Jackson. And it's interesting to think about, like, the level of celebrity he had before the internet era and how that compares, like to now.
100%.
And because, I mean, I don't know. Like, you look at his crowds and everything and the number of people he had and globally. Like, if we look at, I don't know, it's funny to think about, like, how many Instagram followers does Michael Jackson have today? Like, if he was still alive or something like that. Would you say that like his celebrity is unmatched? Like nobody is ever going to be as big of a celebrity as Michael?
There's no way to, because again, it's like people look, oh, look at how many like followers like Taylor Swift has or Ariana Grande has or whoever now. It's like give Michael that platform in his time. It's just not even close. Like again, I think that's the biggest part that you touched on. I was like he was doing this without the modern power of social and the internet. Like there are news cameras and stuff, but
that was another thing that I thought was super cool in the movie was the whole MTV part where like the other thing besides being really good at making music, he also had that kind of marketing like genius, I guess, where he was like, no, like I have to be on MTV. Like I don't want to do press tours or I don't want to do all this promotional stuff. He like knew kind of to cut the fluff and just like, go after what was important. So I thought that was super cool. He's like, I want Thriller on MTV or whatnot. And that whole sequence with the guy behind the desk where he, put his big boy pants on and made the call and stuff. Like I thought that was really cool. And like people too, to this day, like they say like Thriller is like the best music video of all time. And the other thing I thought was really cool too, I found out later was like Michael Jackson would treat his music videos like short films. Like he got like big name directors. I forget off the top of my head who he got, but he was getting these big name guys to essentially make these short films. So like he was looking at promoting his music in a way that was entirely different from anybody else at the time.
And that could really be a big part of the second movie too, is I thought like what hasn't been scratched for music yet are some of, not Thriller level, but I thought some of the more creative music videos were from the next album with like Black or White and stuff like that. Which touching on the Super Bowl, that was kind of like the set list was like comes out with Jam the way he did on the tour, right into Billie Jean, right into Black or White, and then ends with Heal the World, which was really cool. They did like a whole like kind of like card like trick. Like, I mean, they do them now in the NFL all the time, but it was cool to see it done back then.
Yeah.
Where I was going with like combining like the sports and music on this show is, again, unbelievable show. It reset the the future of the Super Bowl halftime show, but also just from an aesthetically like unbelievable thing to look at on TV. This Super Bowl was at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and I think far and away it's the most beautiful place to play any sport in the United States. I think it's the most aesthetically pleasing venue in any sport anywhere.
You said Pasadena?
Yep, so that's where they played like the Rose Bowl every year for college football.
Okay.
They hosted a bunch of Super Bowls like back like pre-2000, but for me it was cool because like the way that the timing worked of like when the halftime show was at like time of day. There's a certain time out in California where like as the sun starts to head down to there, like the sunset like golden hour starts.
Yeah. The
views that they'll do like overhead around that stadium are like breathtaking, and I'm happy that the halftime show was kind of lined up to that time of the day, because like it just, everything about that show was phenomenal. And again, bringing new production that just like completely revolutionized what the Super Bowl halftime was going to be. Funko just released like a Funko Pop of like the Super Bowl halftime show for him, which I think is which I think is awesome. And again, I'm sure inspired by like the hype of the movie and stuff, but that's all stuff that I hope is in the second one. Is just, we have to touch on the halftime show. There's still so much music to do.